Hi everyone, it's Andrea over at Sewspire.com. I have a full bobbin in the machine and we are going to be sewing a larger version of a organizer cubby box that has a drawstring top closure. So here's what it looks like. It's a very large 10.5 by 10 inch fabric bin here with this fun little drawstring top on it, and that cinches everything up, and then you could just tie that right in a knot, style your sides, and off you go with your little picnic lunch inside of there. And then when you arrive, you just untie, reach inside and open that up, and you can access all your content. You can make coordinating fabric napkins and a blanket and a tablecloth to go with this. Super cute. I have taught this same tutorial in a miniature version for our Sewspire patrons. So if you are a member of the Sewspire Patreon page, then you are familiar with this project. I really wanted to size it up. This would be a great bag for this summer living that we're about to embark on. You could take it to the swimming pool, on a picnic. I'm sure you all will come up with lots of great ideas, so please post your preferred use down in the comments. And then, as always, I am also going to have a design board for this project. The design boards, if you're not familiar, are PDF documents which include all the pattern measurements and the material and supply list, as well as really concise written instructions. So you can save those, print those, download those to your computer. And I am committed to creating a new design board for every tutorial in 2021. So you can collect them as we go. And I can't even hardly believe we're almost halfway through 2021. So without further ado, shall we get started? So for this project, we're going to be using the modified T method and 12-inch squares. In total, you're going to need 10 of these 12-inch squares. And then we're going to be working with some 3 by 6-inch pieces of material, which we're going to fold to create little tabs across the top. I have cut out, I believe, 8 of these right now. I may not use them all. I have, again, never made this project in this particular size, so I am just going to wing it as we go. And then I have 2 full cuts, and by full cut I mean 44 inches long, 3 inches wide, and these are going to become the drawstrings for across the top of this project, and then they will double as the handles. I have reinforced the base with some Peltex 70, and the exterior side panels are all backed with fusible fleece. All right, so for time's sake, I have pre-crafted the interior of this, which is made from the quilt weight cotton, and the actual side panels, the 4 sides, do not have interfacing, but the base does have that Peltex 70, which I stitch in place. You could go with a very lightweight interfacing for the interior. I do not suggest anything heavy because it's going to inhibit the function of this project. And once we assemble the exterior, that fusible fleece has a fair amount of body to it. So I think that you will be happy with the level of stability that you can attain just using the fabric, the fusible fleece, and the Peltex 70. So to begin, you're going to want to center your Peltex on the base. I cut my Peltex 11.5 by 11.5 just so I didn't have to trim up anything. I'm still going to use 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, so I will be capturing the Peltex in the seam, but I will not have to trim away those seams. So once you get that centered, then you're going to stitch an X right through the center of that base panel, and that will attach the Peltex to that fabric. For this project, I'm using a 3.0 stitch length and a 90-14 needle. Okay, so that's what the base panel looks like, and you're going to set that aside. And then because the interfacing on the side panels is fusible, I'm not going to stitch through that, but it would be absolutely gorgeous if you quilted those. If you had the time, it would be really lovely. So the first thing we want to do is position 2 of those panels right sides facing and stitch down that right hand edge with the 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. And then I'm going to open that up, and I am going to position a second panel on the left hand edge and stitch down that using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. And that creates our tri-folding panel. Then I'm going to take the base panel, which has the Peltex, and position the remaining panel with the fleece on it right sides facing, and I'm going to stitch down one side using the 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. And that creates the double panel. Now it is important that you get the base on the base of this project. So for the next step of this, you're going to open up that tri-folding panel on the table, and then you're going to position the base with the X on top of that and center that base panel with the base of the center panel, okay? And then you're going to stitch seam to seam or finger to finger, which is different than end to end. You're leaving that 5/8 of an inch gap at each end. And this is why I call it the T method. You have a very large T, and now the next step is to attach the base of those side panels with the sides of your base panel. Just work one panel at a time, and again, you're only stitching seam to seam. And you're going to repeat that on the other side. And now your stage is set, and you just need to raise up the opposite wall and join those sides. And so I just like to work one side at a time, and I align everything and stitch from the top to that bottom seam. Repeat that process on the opposite side. case you're wondering, I had to piece together my fusible fleece. I was at the end of the lot there, so I did piece that side. I'm sure it will be just fine. Okay, so now I have this awesome large jumbo box. I'd love to just make a whole bunch of these bins slash fabric boxes in this size as well. So now you can turn this fully interfaced exterior box right sides out, poke out all your corners. This fabric's a lot of fun, isn't it? I found it at that cute little quilt shop that Isabel and I went to a few weeks ago. Okay, if you like, you can trim up those seams towards the top. I'm not going to fuss with that. I am going to open those seams towards the top though and pin down that top edge by folding that fabric inward about 1 inch. And because I want those seams open, I'm going to pin the corners first. And you can see how much body this fleece adds, right? In comparison to that interior, which has no interfacing. So then once I get those corners pinned in place, then I just move around the edge. I don't have enough clips on hand for this project because I am currently building out a 100 pocket tote for our AMC design challenge, and so all of my clips are holding those pockets together until I can get the stitches in place. So here I am fumbling with these pins and poking the heck out of myself. I'm not used to working with them so much now. My other half of my clip collection is at my home studio, so I may have to invest in another package of those tins. Although once the bag is done, I will have enough clips on hand for most projects. And I will be sure to share photos with you all of this 100 pocket tote bag when it's done. Some lucky winner is going to receive a $100 gift card to Hawthorne Supply Company. You would need to be a part of the Patreon community to participate. If you're a really fast sewer, you could still join us on Thursday to share your 100 pocket tote, but I'm guessing that there's not enough time for you to participate in that. But there will be 2 more master classes. I call it AMC. AMC 10 and 11 will take place in 2021. So if you'd like to be part of that fun, I'll put a link to the Patreon page down in the notes for you. We'd love to have you join us over there. It truly is a wonderful group of ladies. All right. So now I'm going to bring back the interior, which was crafted in exactly the same way, less the interfacing. I did have that Peltex 70 on the base though, and I have taken that top edge of the interior and pressed it over 1 inch, and now I'm going to fit that interior inside of my exterior. I like to align the corners first. If your seam allowance was consistent, everything should match up nice. Sometimes when you use batting for the exterior or interior, it doesn't matter. Just if one of the interiors or exteriors does not have batting, sometimes you can have a misalignment even if your seam allowance was perfect, and that is because the interfacing shrinks the fabric. So In this case, I imagine that your interior would be too big. So you have a couple options. You can take the interior in at like the top 3 inches of the seam in each corner, just a smidgen. You'd be surprised how fast it comes in. Or you could just take a little pleat right at center, okay? Both are gonna look really nice. Now, so far, mine is lining up pretty good, so that's nice. There's always too a little bit of ease in the fabric, right? And so you can stretch and shimmy to get things to fit nice. I do find as long as you start by matching up the corners, it helps a lot. Okay, then go ahead and just toss it around like a pizza. That's what that reminds me of, like a pizza guy. And tuck all those corners in, and this is what it looks like. It's a really great bin right now. If you wanted to stop right now and just stitch around the perimeter, you would have a darling bin which you could fold over that top edge and have the little accent. It'd be crazy cute. But we're going to take it to the next level. So I have prepped all of my straps here, and I gave you those measurements in the beginning. The measurements are again also in the design board, which I'll put a link to for you. So if you're just joining us and you are not familiar, I craft all of my straps in the same way. I press them in half long ways, open that up, bring those outer edges inward to meet on its center press line, press again, and then fold that over to create a 4-ply strap. Then I stitch down the open edge, and in this case they're very narrow straps, so I am not going to add that second row of stitching down the opposite edge. So I use that folding technique to craft the 2 long drawstrings and the 8 little tabs. So all I have to do is run a row of stitching down this short tab. Okay, so these tabs are like belt loops, and they are going to be tucked 2 on each side, and I think I'm going to come 2, maybe 3 inches from those side seams. I'm going to measure here, give you a better idea. Yep, come in 3 inches from each side seam, and I have 4 of each print. So I think what I will do is put 2 like ones on each side, and you're going to want these little tabs sticking up about 1.5 inches. So I've folded them in half, tuck those raw edges in between the interior and the exterior layers, and then I'm coming over 3 inches on each side, and I'm just going to continue that process until I end up with 2 tabs on each side. Okay, so the distance in between each set of tabs should also be 3 inches, and then the distance from the side seam to the first tab will be approximately 3 inches as well. Go ahead and check everything before we stitch this down. So now the next step is to position this up on the machine deck and stitch all the way around. I'm going to go ahead and take the time to reinforce each tab with a back stitch, because that is definitely a stress point, because we're going to be pulling the drawstrings, and that's going to add additional tension in those areas. So I think it's easiest just to reinforce the tabs as you go. You also have the option of coming back around and incorporating a second row of stitching, which I still may do, because zipping around that, bumping the stitch line down just like a 1/4 inch, 5/8 of an inch, and adding a second row of stitching just honestly seems like a great idea. So I think I'll do that as well. I like to start at one of the side seams, and I just right now have the right hand edge of the machine foot aligned with the top of this project. Okay, I've made it all the way around once. I reinforce each tab with a back stitch. Now I'm going to cut that thread and bump down what I imagine is just a 1/4 inch, because I'm aligning the right hand edge of the foot with the top of the last seam, and I am going to stitch all the way around one more time. Okay, I've made it all the way around, and this is what the project looks like. Just have to trim up a couple threads here, and then what I'm going to do is thread the drawstrings through there one at a time. Lucky for me, these are nice wide loops, so I don't need a safety pin to do this. So I'm just going to go all the way around the project. Okay, and then I want to line up the drawstrings and go ahead and tie them in a knot. You could stitch them if you wanted, but I think the knot is fun because then you can use it as a little kind of stopper when you're pulling, and just get that good and tight, and then you can trim off the edge there. I don't mind having the raw edges and just letting them fray. If you really wanted, you could finish the edge of your drawstring. The only consideration is sometimes when you fold all that fabric over, it becomes too thick to even knot it. In that case, if you're going to finish the edges of your drawstring, then for this part you would just stitch those two finished edges together. So this is what your little project should look like so far. You do want to make sure that that belt loop what is nice and straight, and that the drawstring did not get twisted at all in there. Okay, and then what you're going to do is, this drawstring ended up at one seam. Come across to the opposite seam, and that's where you're going to start threading, because you want these drawstring knots to end up on opposite corners. So like catty corner, I think they call it. I don't know if it's catty corner or kitty corner. And you're just putting this second drawstring through, and you will have to pull and straighten a bit. Just again, make sure that you keep the actual drawstring from twisting. Okay, and now I'm back to that opposite side, and so I just want to align the drawstring ends, And in my case, I only have the stitching on one side, so that's very helpful. I have my stitching going towards the bottom of the caddy, so I know as long as both of those stitch lines are towards the base, my string is not crooked. And so now I'm just going to pull on that really good and then trim up the edges. Okay, so when it's open, that's what it looks like, right? And those little tabs could sit down in there even. I imagine over time they'll just naturally kind of flop in or out because they don't have a lot of interfacing in them. And then let's say I load up my dog toys and I'm ready to go. All I have to do is pull that closed, and then I have this super sweet little portable bag that's a lot of fun and easy to access. So then when it's time to open it up, just put my fingers right in the middle and voila! It's fun, right? And if you did want to fuss with this and style it a bit, I would pull the drawstrings all in towards the center and then tuck in those sides like that. You could even totally could knot this. Like, I'm thinking this is the world's cutest picnic bag ever, right? Imagine if you went to the park or the pool over the summer and you're the family with the awesome sauce picnic tote. So this might be way too cute for dog toys. And I might have to rename this a picnic basket. It is so fun. Okay, so you just untie, pull on that, pack your picnic, and have a blast. So let me give you some finished measurements on this. We have 10 inches approximately, 10.5 inches. So it is 10.5 inches around the base there on each side and 10 inches tall. And you could fit a lot of goodies inside of there. So if you will, please leave a comment on how you might use your drawstring basket. And then if you have any project requests, I'd love to hear those as well. And then I will see you next Tuesday, 2 p.m. Eastern, for another inspired sewing project. Until then, as always, please know the creative genius in me will be celebrating the creative genius in you. Have a beautiful week, everyone. Thank you so much for sewing with me.